Congratulations, football fans. We've officially made it to March, which means it is the month for the return of football. The UFL kicks off in just 26 days, and we are starting our team preview series. We are breaking down these teams and trying to figure out who's going to be on top for this league. We're starting off with the defending 2025 UFL champions, the DC Defenders. We're going to break it all down starting now. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of the D-Gen Docs. What is up, folks? I am your host, the D-Gen Doc, and again, it's all about the DC Defenders today. We have done our league overview, the UFL 2026. What is this thing going to look out? We've got new teams, we've got relocation, we've got new ownership, we've got new everything. There's a playoff format. All that's been talked about in the episode, everything you need to know about the UFL. We also just did a rules breakdown. They finally came out the rules last week, how this is actually going to work. There's a 4-point field goal. The tush pushes bans. Major controversy. Spoiler alert, there has been 0 tush pushes ran in the entirety of spring football. So really just kind of a headline grab. But there's a ton of new rules. Did an episode on that. So definitely check those out. But today starts the official team preview breakdown. We've got 8 teams, and what better team to start with than the DC Defenders, the reigning 2025 UFL champions. We are going to be talking everything from head coach, stadium, to what do they look like in 2025? What are their odds? What are their betting odds to win in 2026? Quarterback room, key players, and overall team outlook. So this episode is all about the DC Defenders here, the first of our 8-team team preview series before March 27th, when we kick this thing off and we actually get week 1 real football action. So these DC Defenders there, a couple of their different logos here. Again, pretty obvious, based out of Washington, D.C. They play in Audi Field. This is one of the OG soccer stadiums. Kind of talked about it. New owner, Mike Rapoli. He has kind of one of the biggest things that he's tried to emphasize since taking over ownership this offseason is moving teams to smaller venues to kind of get that intimate fan feel, kind of create that home field advantage. Because in all reality, only the St. Louis Battlehawks in their Battle Dome, which does seat up to 60,000, where they would bring in up to 35, 40 grand, which is an insane home field. Most of these other teams were kind of hovering around 10K. And it was, in these big stadiums, it really creates kind of an empty, not a great look, right? The players don't like it. It's kind of weird for the fans. It's not a great product on TV. However, one of the smaller stadiums is Audi Field in DC. It's where the MLS team for DC plays, and they've actually had a pretty damn solid home field advantage. These fans get after it, and of course, we have to give them recognition because this is the home of the infamous Beer Snake. That is right. If you've watched any bit of it was the XFL and now the UFL, any spring football. Sports Center has done not a complete documentary, but a piece on the beer snake. For those that are not aware, that is kind of what it looks like. I've got another nice shot here for you. Feed the snake. Essentially what it is the home fans decided, hey, let's just combine all our empty beer lemonade cups and create a beer snake from the top. It starts in the bottom of the section and works its way all the way to the top there. It is definitely one of the more fun aspects of the home environment for the DC Defenders. So yes, the home of the beer snake there at Audi Field. Now, 2025, what did they look like? Well, they were not some dominant team. In the past in spring football, particularly the Birmingham Stallions, there can be a team that just is a clear level above everybody else. You see it during the regular season, and it builds and winds up to a championship. Again, the Birmingham Stallions, when they were in the USFL, they won it twice. And then the first year of the UFL, they won it. And you could just tell they were at a different level. For the DC Defenders, in 2025, they were a 6-4 team, but they were pretty up and down. They kind of barely made the playoffs there in their XFL division, which was a little bit down compared to the USFL division. And they kind of got hot at the right time and won it all. Obviously, again, they are the 2025 reigning UFL champs, but they were underdogs both in the first round of the playoffs against the St. Louis Battlehawks and then in the championship against the Michigan Panthers, which I thought the Michigan Panthers were probably the best team overall consistently, but they got hot. The Defenders got hot and they took it home. And a lot has to do with this new coaching staff coming together, right? So let's talk a little bit about the coaches and, because I think the coaching aspect of this really is a little bit different compared to some of the other teams there that we're going to highlight looking at the Defenders going into this season. So last season, it was a bit chaotic for the Defenders in the coaching realm. So you had Reggie Barlow, who was the coach in 2024, and he was coming into the season. Everyone thought he was going to be the Defenders coach with Greg Williams there as his DC, former NFL guy. And kind of a week before the season, everything kind of went awry. Essentially, what happened was he got offered the coaching job at Tennessee State, college football head coaching job, and he decided to take it. And then, he kind of snagged Greg Williams. There was originally they're going to split time and he's going to try to do both. But it kind of hard to be a head coach of two different teams. So Shannon Harris actually got offered the interim head coaching job. He took it again with a week notice before. And he was able to build the staff with the same OC and Fred Keiss and DC Blake Williams, who's the son of Greg Williams, who was on the DC Defenders staff. So they really kind of put that together and had to learn on the way. And that's kind of where it was a little shaky throughout the season. But near the end of the season, the team really started to click. And we saw all engines go there in the playoffs, really went on a nice run. Now, looking at the stats for the 2025 season, this was a team that was led by their passing offense. They were the number one offense in terms of yardage, but they were the number 5 scoring offense. So, they dealt with a little bit of turnover issues. They had some trouble converting in the red zone, but they could definitely put up yards on you, especially in the passing game. So they averaged 22.5 points per game. They were the number 1 team in passing yards per game on average, and they had the number 4 rushing offense in the UFL last year. On the defensive side, they were number 6 in yardage and number 6 in scoring. They allowed 22.4 points per game. They were number 5 rushing defense, 5 passing defense. So again, kind of to the point that I was speaking to earlier, this was not an dominating team at all levels that was just going to go and blow the doors off and was the odds-on favorite. And yes, we know that they are going to get it done. They kind of just started clicking at the right time in the playoffs, and the offense really carried them. But yeah, this is a team that during the regular season last year, they averaged 22.5 points and they gave up 22.4. So right in the middle there, about as evenly matched as a team could be. They were +5 in the turnover margin, which obviously was very helpful for them. They had 16 takeaways and 11 giveaways. Now, that was last season. Let's talk about this season and how we're going to go ahead and look forward. 2026 championship odds here. This playoff format is of note. I broke this down before, but it's worth reminding us. So in the past, the first 2 years of the UFL, it was you had a USFL conference where 4 teams from the old USFL and an XFL conference, 4 teams from the old XFL. Top 2 teams in the conference then went to the playoffs. The XFL played each other, the USFL played each other, and then the winners of those games went and played each other in the UFL championship. This year, it's a bit different. They're getting rid of conferences, and it is because it's only 8 teams in the league. It is simply going to be the top 4 teams in the league will make the playoffs, and then you'll kind of see from there. The 1 seed will play the 4 seed, 2 and 3 will play off, and then the 2 winners will go ahead and play in the championship. So it is good to know irrelevant of conferences there. It used to kind of make a bigger deal because you just had to be the top two of the four in your conference. So the odds and things would kind of come into play there. Now it is just top four teams in the league make it, and there is a two game playoff there. So the odds are a little bit different depending on what book you're at. So I've got three books here. You got DraftKings, they're plus 370. The DC Defenders are to go ahead and win it all. Over on Score Bet, they're plus 325. And then on Bet 365 is the best number you could get on the DC Defenders is plus 375 for those defenders there. So they are on Score Bet. Were opened up at like 4-1. They've been bet down, and now they are the odds-on favorite. And then on DraftKings and Bet365, they are the second favorite right behind the Birmingham Stallions, which I'm going to get to the Stallions, but those numbers are a little crazy to me. All right. They are a big key for this team, and kind of what we're going to talk about here with the coaching ranks is consistency, because they're the only team in this league that has their old head coach from last season returning this season, and that is Mr. Shannon Harris. He was the UFL Coach of the Year. Obviously, to come in with a week's notice and then go ahead and get this team to a championship. Incredible job by Shannon Harris, a guy who, he had beef. I think it was week 1 or one of the early weeks with Skip Holtz, who was arguably the best coach in spring football, definitely the recent history. And he's something about someone called him a doorman. It was basically, he kind of came out of nowhere because it was supposed to be Reggie Barlow, and he wasn't the OC, he wasn't the DC, he was someone on the staff that was then offered the job. So incredible job by Shannon Harris to go ahead and come in, be an interim on a week's notice, and take this team to a championship. Now, for the offensive coordinator position, they also get some consistency here. You have Fred Keiss, who is the 2025 UFL Assistant Coach of the Year. He has been the DC's Defenders offensive coordinator since 2023. Again, continuity, consistency continues to be a theme here. And then defensive coordinator Blake Williams, who is the son of former NFL head coach Greg Williams, former defensive coordinator for Defenders. He was the DC Defenders coordinator last season for defense, so he's back as the DC. So same head coach, same offensive coordinator, same defense coordinator. The only team in the league to have this level of consistency. Not bad for the reigning champs. Moving over to the actual roster, the personnel, of course, we have to talk about the quarterback room, because the quarterbacks, like many football teams, going to make or break the team. Now, thankfully, the Defenders have a pretty solid quarterback and have had one for a while there in quarterback Jordan Ta'amu from Ole Miss. He is a spring football veteran. He's been in spring football for, I believe, 5 years now, going on his 5th, 6th season there. And he was not the MVP of the league, but he was the MVP of the UFL Championship, essentially their Super Bowl MVP, which is arguably, hey, he's got a ring, and he's got Bryce Perkins was the league MVP, which he should have been. He was incredible last year. But Jordan Ta'amu was no slouch at all, and he's going to run it back, as the promo says. They are definitely running it back with Jordan Ta'amu at quarterback number 1. He started 9 games last year in the regular season. He had a 54.4% completion percentage, but he threw for 2,155 passing yards, so 2,155 passing yards, 17 pass touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. So let's break this down a little bit. 1, Jordan Ta'amu, he's a bigger guy. He's got a little bit of mobility, but he likes the deep ball. He's got a cannon of an arm on him. He can be a little bit inaccurate at times, but as you can see by the only 54% completion percentage, just a bit above 50%. Typically want your quarterbacks to be closer to the 60. If you can get to the 70 range, that's awesome, but at least somewhere in the 60s, high 50s. He's kind of in the lower half of the 50s, but he's kind of that boomer bust, whether it's going to be he likes to take those deep shots. He was second in the league in passing yards, just behind the spring king in Luis Perez, but he did have more. I think he had 8 more passing touchdowns than the next guy. He had 17 passing touchdowns. So again, the offense ran through Jordan Ta'amu last year, and they really kind of caught, and these wide receivers, obviously, they really kind of caught fire there at the end. The year before, they were much more of a run-first team. Last season, they kind of formed into a pass-first team, especially that deep shot. Their running game wasn't as effective, but their passing offense was go-go, and only 4 interceptions. Again, talking about 54% completion percentage, can be a little bit erratic at times, but it did not lead to turnovers last season. Not to say it won't translate this year, but he seems like he did a better job cutting down the turnovers and really hitting a lot of those deep balls. The rest of their quarterback room, quarterback 2, Mike DeLelio, who they've raved about in camp. He's making strides. And then quarterback 3, Spencer Sanders, the old Oklahoma State quarterback. Not going to spend a ton of time on there because you've got the UFL, championship MVP on your team, arguably the best quarterback in the league. He's going to be quarterback 1. There should be no quarterback controversy here. Jordan Ta'amu is going to be your quarterback for the DC Defenders, and he should be. All right, going to do Western Way. We're going to do the roster breakdown because it's the first team preview. Just a little bit of what we're doing in the background. So we're going to go through some key players and then key losses, and then we'll finish up with some outlook and how I foresee this team playing out this year, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up from there. So with the key players on this team, guys that you should know and guys that are going to make an impact on the team that I believe. First off, obviously, Jordan Ta'amu, just talked about him. UFL champ MVP, one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year, 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. If he has another year like that, it's going to be hard for them to not be at the top of this league. The running back room, they bring back both their starting running backs. Running back 1, Deion Jackson. He was the first-string running back last year. And Abram Smith, RB2. Now, Abram Smith was coming off an ACL tear back in the 2024 season. So he was not quite 100% last year. He was kind of working his way back into it, which allowed Deion Jackson, who's a little bit more of the explosive back, to take over this backfield. Jackson had 440 rush yards and 4 touchdowns. Abram Smith, 326 rush yards and 1 touchdown. So you've got almost 800 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns of production coming back. You bring back your quarterback 1, your RB1, and your RB2. Now, for the wide receivers, you bring back wide receiver 2, Cornell Powell, who had 418 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, and wide receiver Ty Scott, who was injured last year, only played 3 games, but in 2024, Ty Scott was the leading man in this wide receiver room. So, we'll talk about some of the pieces that they lost, but Cornell Powell and Ty Scott, 2 guys that have chemistry with Jordan Ta'amu and have been able to produce at this spring football level. I think that they're, on the outside, they are going to be very well equipped to have another dynamic passing game, and you bring back both of your running backs there. Now, kickers matter in this league. Punters, the UFL seems to not really care about. They are discouraging punting, but kickers, whether it's kickoffs or the 4-point field goal from 60-plus yards, kickers matter in this league. They're also bringing back the option to do a 1-point extra point from the 33-yard line to mirror what the NFL does. So kickers matter in this league. So I'm going to talk about a kicker for every team here. This is one of the only kickers that is returning from last season, Matt McCrane. He was okay. He was 14 for 20 for about 70% on the year, long of 53. So from what we saw last season, he's not a guy who's going to be doing these 4-point field goals. I don't think he's going to be a Brandon Aubrey or a Jake Bates. I don't see him kind of making that leap. He struggled from, really between the 40 to the 49. He was kind of pretty good, 2 for 3, 50 plus, but had a little bit of struggles there. So 70% field goal kicker. You like to see a little bit better there, but that's the guy they're bringing back right now. He is their kicker 1, if you will. So I think the kicking game, some consistency, but not really a strong point in my eyes compared to some of the other teams there. On the defensive side of the ball, you have defensive end Derek Robinson. He was a co-leader in sacks for this team. He had 5.5 sacks last year. He played a huge role down the stretch. He is returning. He's going to be the leading edge rusher in that group, which is good because we'll get to it in a little bit. The edge room is a bit of a question mark this year. They've lost a couple guys throughout the offseason. Cornerback Bryce Thompson is another starter who's coming back. He was a former he was with the San Antonio Brahmas, if memory serves me correct there. He was a starter last year, 30 tackles, 1 sack, 3 pass breakups there. He is a component that was on the defense last year because, Greg Williams' defense is, if you remember, definitely play a specific style of ball. They are going to be aggressive. They are going to blitz the hell out of you, and they are going to play a ton of man-to-man across. So it's a very difficult defense to be a defensive back in, but you have to have strong DBs if you're going to run this play style. His son, Blake Williams, runs a similar style. I don't think he's quite as aggressive as his father, but he does run a similar scheme there. At least they did last year. We'll see if they want to change that up with more of an offseason. Defensive tackle Joe Wallace, fourth on the team in tackles, second in sacks. He had 4.5. He returns to the team as well. A couple of newcomers, though, that I want to highlight. Defensive tackle Casey Rogers. This was a guy who, if his first time being introduced on the UFL side, I'm a New York Giants fan. If you've been rocking with us for the NFL season, you probably already know that. But Casey Rogers was a guy who's been on the Giants practice squad for the past 2 years. He showed some potential playing at Nebraska and Oregon, coming out of college. Big guy, beefy guy who's going to clog up the middle. But he didn't get a ton of, he only got special team snaps in the NFL. So he's trying out the UFL, trying to make more of a name for himself, get an opportunity to get back in the league and get some playing time there. So apparently, there's some camps out of the beat reporters there that he's kind of a big piece for that defensive line right now. He's kind of acting as their run stuffer, if you will. So he's giving some problems to the offensive line. So look for him to make an impact. The other guy in the back end is safety Leon O'Neal, which if you watch the UFL, you know Leon O'Neal. He was a former Houston Roughneck, but he was on the all-UFL team last season, and he's one of the better safeties in the league. So, if you didn't watch the other episode, essentially how roster creation works here is you can essentially franchise tag, for lack of a better term, but you put up to 12 guys on the reserve list where it's like, hey, I'm keeping them from last year. Nobody else can touch them. And then everyone else basically gets put into a draft. So you're going to see a lot of switching of rosters and things like that. So I guess Houston decided that they didn't want to bring back O'Neal this year. I think that's a mistake, and the defenders are going to be able to pick him up and go from there. All right, now we're going to focus on who did they lose. Let's look at the key losses for this team here. First one is going to be Chris Rowland. He was the number one wide receiver for them last year. He had 522 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. He was a kick returner, punt returner. He was in the slot. He was kind of a do-it-all guy for them. He's been in spring football for the past several years, back when he was on the Philadelphia Stars back in the USFL 4 years ago. This guy's been a stud. Now, he's not out of the league. He's going to be playing in Orlando, I believe. We'll get to that when we get to them. But he is going to be a big loss for them. They do have a couple of those guys with some veteran chemistry. They also run a guy like Kiki Cootie, who played for Houston and bounced around the NFL for a little bit. He's a guy that potentially could take over that role. Montrell Washington's another guy they're going to need to step up there. But it is a big loss for them because they're losing both Chris Rowland, their wide receiver 1 from last year, and their wide receiver 3 in Braylon Standards, who put up 332 yards and 3 touchdowns. So you are losing some wide receiver production. You're also losing some tight end production. Their tight end number 1, who they wasn't on the team, they traded for him in the offseason. He just announced he's retiring. Briley Moore, he was a big part of this offense. He was their tight end number 1. They now have a pretty big hole. I mean, they traded for the guy, and then a week later he retired. They were obviously not expecting him to not be out there. So this is one where they have a hole at the tight end position. So they're going to have to figure out. They've got a couple guys there. We're going to see who kind of rises to the cream of the crop there. But there is some question marks at the tight end position. Also the defensive end position. Andre Mincy retired as well. He was the co-leading sack guy with Robertson. They both had 5.5 sacks. He led the team in forced fumbles. He was, it was that 1-2 punch. You had Mincy and Robertson on either side, and that really gave some problems for quarterbacks. They kind of helped each other get some sacks. You're not getting that this year. So you're losing Mincy. Also, defensive end David Bellamy, who they picked up in the draft, he did not report to camp, so he won't be out there. They just lost one of the Murphy brothers, is also retiring. When they say retire, a lot of time it either means they're trying to play in the NFL or it's not really a traditional to retire because a lot of these guys are young. It's just, hey, I'm not playing in the UFL this season for whatever reason that may be. So edge room, going to have some question marks. You do have Roberson, who is a stud, but you're going to have to look for some other guys to step up there. Cornerback DeAndre Baker, former first-round pick for my New York Football Giants, did not pan out for us in the NFL. Came to the UFL, and he really shined last season. He was on the all-UFL cornerback. He was their best cornerback. He had 10 pass breakups, 2 interceptions in the regular season. He was by far their best defensive back on the team. He did not report to camp, whether he's trying to get a spot in the NFL. Again, not exactly sure the specifics. Doesn't really matter for this intent and purposes, but he didn't report to camp. Also, they drafted Kai Nakua, brother of Puka Nakua. He was a safety for the Michigan Panthers. He did not report to camp as well. So the defensive backfield and the defensive end position is going to be up for kind of a little bit of question marks there. The other big guy they're missing, their leading tackler last year with 53 tackles and 3 sacks, linebacker Anthony Hines. They decided to not kind of put him in that reserved franchise tag list and let him go. Now he's going to be playing for another team this season in the UFL. So that defense is going to be some new faces. And you're not talking about just some guys that were just maybe starters or like developmental guys. You're talking about your leading defensive back, your leading edge rusher, and your leading tackler in the linebacker position. This is going to be interesting. Another thing for the DC Defenders is, someone put out the numbers, basically percentage of players that the team drafted that actually reported to training camp, right? Because it's great you can draft these guys, but if they're not playing in the league, you're essentially wasting a draft pick. We'll talk about it. The Birmingham Stallions lost their first-round pick. Steven Gonzalez, offensive guard, they told him he was going to be back, and then he got a job at Penn State as his alma mater to be some type of coach for them. So he took that opportunity and left. That's a draft pick that they essentially wasted. So the Defenders had 73% of the guys they drafted show up to camp, which is the lowest percentage in the entire league. So that is something to note. They drafted these guys, thought they were going to fill these holes in their roster, and those guys aren't there. So now they're kind of scrambled and have to figure out what these guys are going to look like. So they are dealing with a decent amount of losses there for the DC Defenders. All right, let's wrap this thing up, tie a bow on it. Outlook, biggest question marks for the DC Defenders. Again, always have to start with they are your reigning 2025 UFL champions, And they also bring back the MVP of the UFL championship in quarterback 1, Jordan Ta'amu. So consistency is something that this DC Defenders team has that no other team in the league has. Not only are they the only team in the league with their head coach returning from last season, but they get their head coach, their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, and their quarterback 1. So consistency is a huge theme. In the world of spring football and the UFL, you don't get a lot of that. I mean, shoot, we've got 3 new teams coming in. We've got 2 teams relocating. The Defenders staying in the same stadium, staying with the same fan base. They're bringing back a bunch of people. That is great. Now, I was getting to it, and the key losses part of it, the defensive reload. I mean, this was a defense that they were okay, but they weren't dominant. I mean, they were the number 6 scoring defense. They were number 6 giving up in yards, 5 rush defense, 5 pass defense. This is a defense that was not a strong suit of this team. And now you're losing your best edge rusher in Andre Mincy there, your best linebacker in Anthony Hines, who is the leading tackler on this team, and their best defensive back in DeAndre Baker, who's on the All-UFL team, 10 pass breakups, 2 interceptions to lead this team. That's hard to replace. The offense, you're losing your wide receiver 1, you're losing your tight end 1. They've got some guys there where I'm a little bit more confident, and Jordan Ta'amu is the biggest piece, and the offensive coordinator in Kais. Because of that consistency and that chemistry, I'm a little bit more confident their offense is going to be able to figure it out. Their defense, mind you, I mean, hey, they won the UFL championship last year, but they were not a dominant group. You've got a coach who, in Blake Williams, he's got good potential, but it's not like he has this long track record of being a great defensive coordinator. His dad was a great defensive coordinator, and he's been put in this position, and he's a great mentor, obviously, but this is going to be a much tougher task for the defense. So this is a team that, especially early on, we're going to be trying to see what does this defense look like. This is ultimately a betting show. I am going to be looking to bet some of their overs likely because this is a team where I like their offense. I think their offense is going to be able to go. Jordan Ta'amu is a big play guy, but I think their defense could be a little bit leaky and questionable on the other end there. And then again, they do have the lowest percentage of players drafted that reported to camp out of all the teams. They got to fill some holes. All right. So overall outlook, what I think this team is going to be, I think this team is going to be a solid team. You have arguably the best quarterback. You're bringing back your whole coaching staff. You're coming off a UFL championship. I think their team is going to go as far as their defense can take them. Again, their offense, not super concerned about. Got the quarterback, got the running back room, got some wide receivers, got the offense coordinator. Great. This defense, I still have question marks about the defensive coordinator. I think he stepped into a great situation. Still have some things to learn there. You're losing your best defensive end, your best defensive back, and your best linebacker. I do think this team is squarely going to be a playoff team, but I am not expecting them to go ahead and run through the league and be a dominating team, right? I don't think this is going to be like the Birmingham Stallions were in the first 3 years of spring football, where they were just reload and repeat. And this team, they had coaching consistency, and they had quarterback consistency, and they had some of these players that are still on the team now that you just knew what you were going to get out of them. Offense, maybe, but defense, I think there's a lot of changing variables there. So, is this a team that I am rushing to the window to bet at plus 375, plus 325? I mean, definitely not going to bet them at the worst number, but right under 4-1. No, I don't think that I'm ready to lay that kind of price to say, yes, they're definitely, a 3-1. I get it. They're coming off a really great year. But if we look at the stats last year, they were not some type of dominating team. And again, the defense has a lot of question marks. I do think they're going to be a solid team. I do think they'll be in that upper half, that top four. Ultimately, do think they'll be a playoff team. But I do not think that they are going to be running away with this league and going for that back-to-back. Great thing is, hey, that's what I think. But Saturday, Friday, Sunday, they get to show it on the field. And that's where the games come out. And we get to start that March 27th. We are 26 days away from UFL kickoff there. That's the first team preview. Everything you need to know about your DC Defenders, your defending champion DC Defenders here. What to look forward to? Well, we've got 7 more teams. So we're going to do the 7 more team previews there definitely before March 27th there. I typically like to do a season preview where essentially I give out my futures. These are the teams that I'm going to be betting on before the season starts to go ahead and win the championship there. It'll be a much shorter episode this year with doing the team previews. And then weekly betting show is kind of what this show typically is. So I will go, there's 4 games every week. I will break down each of the games, talk about what bets I'm betting for the games, and then end it out with a best bet segment at the end. So we hope you join me. This is the first of the 8 team previews. Already did a league overview episode, already did a rules breakdown episode. So definitely check those out. Those will be at the end of the video in the link below. So check those out and get excited for the return of football. We thankfully don't have to wait all the way until August and September when college football and the NFL kick off. I think it's a very exciting league. We've got new teams. We've got new ownership, new rules, keeps you on your toes. And these guys are hungry, trying to fight for a shot to get in the NFL. So don't tell them it's not professional football. Don't tell them these games don't matter, because we've seen guys like Brandon Aubrey, like Jake Bates, like Sal Cannella, like Jalen Redmond, who are now on NFL rosters making millions of dollars because of this league. So let's just enjoy the football that it gives us. All right, folks, you know what they say. A lock a day keeps the bookie away. And here at the DJ Doc, we've got your prescription. From Doc here on DFSG Plus, I'm out of here.